So welcome everybody. This is Sanjeev Augustine, and I'm joined by my colleague Roland Cuellar, and a whole host of surrounding participants who are helping us put this event on. So thank you to our community of practice hosts. We do have some time constraints, and we're going to try to figure out how to do a lot of this content between now and 3 o'clock, where I believe some of you have to leave. So the title of this presentation is called Cracking the Lean Portfolio Management, or LPM Code, within the perspective of overall business agility, and also talk about this organizational construct called the Agile PMO. So quick agenda for our talk. And before we jump into that, I just want to say a word about our company. So Roland and I both represent a company called Lightspeed, light as in flexible, speed as in fast. And you may have been, well, you have been exposed to our work in the coaching side of our services through several coaches like Raj and George and many others. But we also have spent the last 13 years helping a number of enterprise clients, or clients with enterprise adoptions. And you see those at the bottom of the right-hand side of the screen: Nationwide Insurance, Samsung, PG and Pacific Gas and Electric, and also the government with the Department of Homeland Security. And our work over there tends to happen with management consulting and training specifically in those areas: project to product, lean portfolio management, and leadership. Now, we've also gotten some industry recognition because of the work that we've done with those marquee clients, and we're very happy and fulfilled because our mission is on the top left over there, which is to make people's work, yours, ours, and everybody that we come in contact with, more productive, valued, and fulfilling, right? So quick introduction to myself. I'm the founder and CEO of Lightspeed. I've been doing this for 20 years. This is the 20th anniversary of Agile. And Roland, I think I've known you pretty much all that time. So why don't you just say a quick word about yourself?
Okay. Yeah, Roland Cuellar. I've been doing the Agile thing every day for over 15 years. And in that time, I've worked with a lot of great clients: Capital One and Nationwide Insurance and DHS, and so many others. And we've learned a lot from those engagements. So we're going to share some of the latest learnings with you here today.
Okay, thank you, Roland. So a quick agenda for today. What we want to do is to introduce the notion of business agility. Different people have different ideas of what that means. We'll give you a perspective that I think is fairly well established, including with the Business Agility Institute. We want to talk about some barriers to business agility, and then get into the elements of cracking this lean portfolio management code as a part of business agility. So if business agility is the end that we're seeking, we want to be fast, we want to be flexible as an organization, as a business, then the LPM, lean portfolio management, becomes the means towards that end, right? We'll share 3 elements over here: managing end-to-end flow with a portfolio Kanban, evolving a flexible funding model, and setting up this construct that we call an Agile Value Management Office, or Agile VMO. We'll have time for Q&A at the end, so let's jump into this first definition of what is business agility. I'm going to throw this out as a question and maybe just see if any one of you guys has a quick answer. The question is this: we have a customer who has a global cosmetics business. And right after the pandemic hit, and over the last few months, what do you think is the number one product that they've been asked to provide, and that they've been providing, and that they've responded to the market with? Anyone guess?
Hand sanitizer.
Oh, amen. So that's a gentleman who's got it going on, right? It's hand sanitizer, and here's what they do. They even put their little imprimatur on this, right? Their little signature, that by making it, sweet smelling hand sanitizer, or different scents, if you will, right? So think about this: a regular cosmetic business suddenly revenue drops by 60 to 70%. And they respond by going after the market needs. Okay? Another more mundane example, or not mundane, but more familiar example, is Sysco Corporation, and this is SYSCO, the mass retailing company that supplies restaurant supplies to restaurants all around the country. their business went down by 40%. Right after, obviously, their end customers got hammered. If you have your favorite restaurant, more than likely they're getting the supplies from Cisco. Well, Cisco responded with alacrity really quickly. They had an idea. They said, let's do two things. One thing that we'll do is we'll go direct to customers. We'll figure out how to sell our products direct to end customers. And the second thing is not just sell, what they'll do is we'll not just provide products to our restaurant customers, we'll help them sell things. So what they did was they set up a portal for small mom and pop type restaurants, and they helped them come up with a product selection and a product help their end customers sell their products better. And the other thing that they did was they helped their restaurant customers set up pop-up markets. So if you went and picked up your delivery, your food delivery at your favorite restaurant, you might find out. So I know, for example, in Herndon, Virginia, there's a Indian restaurant called Kalpasi. Some of you guys might know it. And I found that I could order SN95 masks along with my nice Indian food order, right? So think about that. The interesting thing over here, or the lesson to learn, is that when push comes to shove and when we have a crisis, we are able to work across all our silos. We're able to get stuff done, and we can go very quickly from idea to delivery to business outcome. And then we can measure and learn very quickly. Now, what are some of the things that prevent us from doing that? We have some obstacles that allow this fast learning cycle. The number one obstacle in my mind is, comes because of something called Conway's Law. Conway's Law says that we have organization silos that mirror our process, our product development process, our business processes. So in 2020, unless you're Google or Facebook or any of these product companies that are wired from the ground up with sort of a very flexible and flat organizational structure, those of us who've been around for a while, especially Freddie Mac or organizations of your size, have a legacy organization structure that is optimized for a different type of delivery process or development process. The net being, if you want to deliver business from left to right, from idea, where we go through requirements planning, through delivery, whether we're doing agile or not, into handoff, we have a long front end and a difficult deployment, and generally we're talking about going across 9 silos. Think about that, 9 silos, from customers to business organizations to IT to deployment, 9 silos, and we're throwing the ball over and over from silo to silo, and that just causes a really long latency in how we can get ideas to market. Roland would love to talk about, this is his favorite subject, where he talks about moving from project to product and overcoming the second major obstacle to business agility, which is project mindset or project type thinking. Roland, do you want to take this?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Sanjeev. Really appreciate it. I think several of our largest companies that we've worked with in the last few years, Fortune 200 level companies, have repeatedly asked us to help them with moving from this project mindset to a product mindset. I think a lot of people are thinking about that. They feel that the projects are important. We still need them, but that pendulum is kind of swung kind of far in one direction. And a lot of them are looking for more flexibility and more speed and try to balance out the project versus product thinking. So, one of the things we need to think about in terms of, not only structures that Sanjeev just mentioned, but what it is that we build, right? In the projectized world, we look at requirements as somewhat sacred. We feel we have to deliver them all. And frankly, every client I talk to, I survey, and I ask them, what percentage of the stuff that you build is either unused or very infrequently used? How much functionality that you build gets infrequently used? And the percentages are really high. I mean, just yesterday, I asked a bunch of people this, and I got 40, 50% sometimes, right? There's a huge amount of stuff that we build because it's in the requirements list, but it isn't actually required. And we know it's not required because people don't actually use it, right? And this is where a product-oriented organization would take a more economic view at the feature level and say, you know what, there's stuff here that are economic losers. We should not build those features. So we're going to talk a little bit now about some tools that we put in place to help us uncover these economic losers. How can we not build them? And the ones that we choose to build, how do we accelerate them through? All right, Sanjeev.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Roland. And the major thing that I want to help keep in mind or ask you to keep in mind is this concept of flow. If we have impediments to flow, whether they are organizational silos or work that is too big to make its way through those organizational silos, that's an impediment to flow. So our magic word over here is how do we get the work to flow from start to finish and back to our customer as quickly as possible. Three ways we're going to share with you, and the number one way that we want to share today is this concept of a portfolio Kanban. So Kanban, go ahead, Ronald. You're going to take us through slide 18, I believe.
Okay, yep, will do. So this board I like a lot, and there's a couple of things on it that are very intriguing. What this organization has decided to do is make their near-term strategic goals very explicit, and they're written in column 2. I purposely blurred them so that you can't read what their strategic goals are, but this is a Fortune 200 financial services company, and one small part of that Fortune 200 financial services company, a particular portfolio of work. But they've got very specific goals they're trying to achieve. In the next column, you see that they have picked out specific features and functionality that they want to deliver against each of those goals, okay? So it's not project level now, it's capability level or feature level. So now they're starting to think not about delivering the project, but about really using the project as really just an accounting source, a source of money, but it doesn't drive the delivery. The business outcome drives the delivery. So you can see next to each of those business goals, there's different colors of cards. Those different colors represent different funding sources, which to me is fascinating. So what they're doing, right, is not saying we're going to deliver this project. They're saying, here's the business outcome I want to achieve. I'm going to deliver these features from this project, and I'm going to deliver these other features. Oh, not yet, quite yet, sorry. I'm going to deliver these other features from this other project, and I'm going to deliver some other features from the green project, and I'm going to put those together to solve our business problem. So now we're using the project as a means of funding work. But that project isn't driving the work. The project accounting isn't driving the engineering or the customer solution. The business outcome is, and we're pulling work out of different funding buckets to get the right stuff done at the right time. This is a very strategic way of thinking at a portfolio level, not about delivering projects, but using projects to deliver business outcomes, right? It's a very different mentality, okay?
So as Roland gets ready to talk about this next slide, for those of you who are having palpitations as you see this physical board and wondering how this is all working in the post-COVID world, it's all virtual, right? So even when it's physical, they have all this stuff in Jira or Jira Line or some tool like that. Roland, go ahead.
Right. Yeah, thanks. So here's a further example of this. This board you see on the top is huge. This is from another Fortune 200 level financial services firm, and this is a particular portfolio of work that they've got going on. There's a lot of work up here. This is maybe a 20 or 30 million dollar portfolio work. It's not huge, it's not the whole company, but it's a particular portfolio that's not insignificant. You see a lot of requests coming in on the far left, all those pink and green cards. This is stuff people want. The next column over, you see fewer cards, and the next column after that, you see fewer yet. This is them going through some kind of an economic analysis to find the economic winners and kick out the economic losers, right? Which functionality costs a lot to build, and we're not entirely sure people are going to use it, or there's going to be enough upside. Those are the losers, and we're not going to do this. Which functionality seems to provide a lot of value, we think, at a pretty low cost to develop. Those are the economic winners, and we want to accelerate those. So a way to do that, the way to uncover that analysis is through this tool called Weighted Shortest Job First down at the bottom. Not going to go into great detail about how that works, but basically we're going to look at all the feature requests, and we're just going to use, for you agile people out there, we're going to use story points. We're going to use points to estimate how much value is there, how much risk reduction is there. What is in point value, what's all the good stuff we're going to get if we do this feature? And then also in the next to the last column, how complicated is this feature? It's just relative estimates. This feature is more complicated than that one. And then I can do the math. I can add up all the good stuff, the first 4 columns. I can divide it by the job size, the next to the last column, and I get the WSJF score, right? Feature number 5 has the highest score. It provides the most economic upside for the least cost. And we want to take those high scoring things and pull them forward. Look at the feature right after the one that scored 4. It's 0.48, right? Clearly an economic loser. A lot of cost, not a lot of value. Let's try to not build that at all. Or if we're going to build it, if we have to build it, let's delay it. And trying to bring some economic sanity to what it is we build and in what order that we build it. And that's all being visualized and done out in the open in this portfolio management board up there. This particular company does this WSJF scoring at several points along the way. They're creating a competitive environment where only the best ideas win. Making software is extremely expensive. It's wacky expensive, right? And so we want to make sure that we utilize that cost in the best possible way. Okay? So how do I get this work flowing now, right? So we've decided what the economic winners are, but how do I get it flowing across all the silos that Sanjeev was talking about? We've worked with several companies now to implement and design value stream teams, right? So the notion about a value stream team is it's kind of like a little entrepreneurial unit, a little company within the company. And I've got very senior level business people and analysts of various kinds, developers, many kinds of testers, maybe some UX, UI, an architect. And they're going to run this little business or medium-sized business, let's say. They're going to run this medium-sized business and make these decisions as a group and pull that work forward and really operate as an entrepreneurial unit, right? They're going to try to break down all those 9 or 10 or 12 silos, kind of like we create a cross-functional agile team, but we're going to take that same idea and expand it further upstream and further downstream to create this little company in a company that can operate at entrepreneurial speed, I'll call it. Okay. So now I've got these two elements. I've got the highest economic value work flowing through. I'm giving it to these entrepreneurial value stream teams that have all of the skills they need to deliver their product or service. And now we're able to fly, right? We are changing the unit of work from delivering projects to delivering units of value. Could be features, MVPs, MMPs, whatever you want to call them. And I may be pulling that functionality from different funding sources, but I can give it to the value stream team. They're able to operate in very agile, fast kind of ways and deliver that stuff to market very quickly. Continuous flow. Okay. A couple of just real examples, sort of case studies, if you will. On the far right, in the upper right, we measured, lead time. And this is how long does it take from when the business recognizes there's a need to when it goes out the door. And what are all the various steps and states along the way? Where are the biggest delays? And the biggest delays up there are not the development. Okay. Over towards the right, there's a little green section, a green column. That's the delivery piece. All the upfront stuff is getting the money, getting the approval, getting the high-level requirements, getting the sign-offs, getting detailed requirements. There's months of work up there, right? That gets done before you can even ever start to really solve the customer problem with the delivery. We did a lot of work with all this lean portfolio management stuff and got this results down in the bottom right, 64 to 72% improvements in what we call business velocity. How fast can we go from when the idea is recognized to when IT can even start building it, right? And went 72% faster there, right? We're able to start solving the problem sooner. And once I give work to IT, then we start to get, by organizing around value streams, we're able to get some pictures like the left of this is the flow of functionality against different features. Each feature is broken down into a bunch of user stories and using value streams to get that stuff done very quickly. So these guys are making great progress against their feature delivery plans.
Roland, could you talk a little bit about the objectives, measuring, tracking the business objectives as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing we tried to do, I showed you in that first slide earlier that there were business goals that were stated, right? And what we're trying to do with many of our customers is to help them implement OKRs, or objectives and key results. The idea there is that we could take big annual strategies and chunk them down into quarterly strategies. What's our goal this quarter? So if I have a very specific business goal this quarter, that flows right into PI planning. The PI planning, we select the features and the functionality that's going to help us meet that business objective. We get really tight alignment between strategy and execution, and they come together at PI planning. All right. This is kind of the big picture when you look at it all together. On the far left, we've got stated objectives, OKRs, things we're trying to achieve in the near term. This particular group has 3 different kinds of work that they're focusing on. They've got cost savings and efficiency work, and there's a row for that. There's a row for innovation or groundbreaking new functionality, and there's a row for that. And there's a row for compliance and regulatory kinds of work. So they're tracking those 3 flavors of work. And they've got this whole system where all the requests come in on the far left. We do the analysis using the weighted shortest job first, and we winnow that down. We do some more analysis, and another level of weighted shortest job first. We winnow it down again. And about
your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. 703939202.
Thank you. Okay, great. What we're trying to do is get alignment across all of our business partners and senior IT leaders on what's the stuff that's going to come into the next PI planning. And one of these columns is called backlog, and it has the items, the features that are going to enter the next PI, okay? And what we're trying to do is make sure that we have the most solid ideas and requests coming into PI planning that match up to strategy, and they are clear economic winners, right? Those go into PI planning, and then the delivery is actually tracked through the remainder of this board. But that's kind of the full system left to right, trying to achieve a continuous flow across the whole organization from, business request on the far left to deployment on the far right. And can I get that, sort of Toyota assembly line continuous flow going across here, really driven by feature level economics, I like to call it.
So that rounds out this section, and we're going to jump in. Just keep an eye on the time, another 7 minutes, I think, or some folks might have to leave. So Roland, can you please tell us about your favorite subject, which is you get excited and passionate about numbers, finance, and setting all working CFOs. So here we go.
Absolutely. So we've done some great work in the last year or two with helping folks totally change their funding model. So it's October, right? This is like a great time to be talking about this. Usually around this time of year in most large organizations, everyone's starting to put together their business cases and their needs for money and what they're going to do next year, and all that stuff is going on. It takes up the attention of the most senior people in the organization, and it takes months. So you think about how costly that is. We're talking about months of work for the most senior people in the organization. And here's what I think happens. I ask this everywhere, and I pretty usually get the same answer. How likely do you think it is that the budget you're going to get next year is pretty much the budget you had this year, plus or minus 5 or 10%? Okay. The answer is yes in most places, that the money we get next year is going to be about what we got this year, give or take a little bit. So let's think about this. We're going to spend 3 or 4 months putting together detailed business cases to come up with a dollar figure that's within 5 or 10% of what we have right now. So some people think that's kind of silly. So if we go to the next slide, we just implemented this at a huge company, Fortune 200 level company, where we just sort of blew all that up and obliterated it. And what they're going to do is do top-down strategic funding. Say, hey, last year we spent $40 million on customer billing processes. Guess what? You get to get 40 billion plus or minus 10% this year. Get to work and start delivering stuff. And let's just cut off that 4 months of business case development. Here's the money. Here's the strategic objectives. Here are some rules around how you can spend that money. And let's get started, right? So the way they've just gotten rid of the business case development for the most part. They still have some, but they're much smaller. And they're just sort of doing this top-down funding based on strategic priorities. And then they put in the governance model around this is, well, you need to spend a certain amount on capital and a certain amount on expense, a certain amount on run the business, a certain amount on grow the business. If you're going to take on an effort that's of more than a certain amount, you probably need to bring it to the PMO for approval and visibility. But basically, we just want you to do WSJF, the weighted shortest job first, show us you're making the right economic decisions, and flow that work through, right? It's a greatly more flexible spending model. You are running a business, and you have the money to spend, and you have a value stream resources to deliver it across many functions, and you've got a strategy to execute against. It's a beautiful system. It's so much less overhead, and it's so flexible. To Sanjeev's opening remarks, you can now respond instantly to any changes in the market, changes in competition, or changes in customer sentiment, because you've got the money and you've got the people, right? And you can make very quick pivots this way. So this is it's not just a pipe dream. It is actually happening in some places.
The future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed.
Absolutely. Sanjeev, I'll turn it back over to you to talk about this other example of flexible funding models.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Roland. So this one is from our friends at Capital One, and it's publicly available should you be interested. It's how Capital One Labs integrates with the mothership and drives innovation. So Roland talked about the whole business funding and how replacing the yearly budgeting cycle with something which is more flexible and updated quarterly, and is based on pre-funding the value streams. Well, in addition to that, or a supplement to that, if you want innovation, and especially when we in this crisis mode, when we want to get something really quickly out there, we have our value stream teams, and we want to be able to set up some dollars and stuff and run experiments, right? Not every single idea will come to fruition, and is as important to kill or terminate or invalidate the bad ideas. Roland called them economic losers, right? So Capital One uses this particular model for innovation, to fund innovation. So what they do is they take a certain dollar amount and say, well, our allocation will be like 25%, low dollar amount, and they'll pretty much keep it open. This is sort of bottom up ideas. You work with the labs, or if you're in one of the ancillary units, you bring in an idea to the lab, you get a team, you work together, and you experiment. And very quickly, 1 to 3 months, it's very high risk. And so what happens is, if indeed something doesn't pan out and we're not meeting the business outcomes very quickly, we kill it, right? It goes away, and no harm, no foul. It's still following that power law that if indeed we're able to move forward and start to move it into experimentation, the return will be a lot, right? So medium risk down over here, things that are validated, move it to formal program incubation. Half of the portfolio goes there. Bigger dollar amounts, longer time cycle, medium risk, and then what you start to see, the different colors are starting to see a little more diligence and definition. The orange blocks are now ready to graduate to a line of business. We proved it out after 6 months, 12 months, 8 months. This has become a successful business idea. New growth opportunity, new market, new hand sanitizer. Let's double down on that. Let's push that out of the market. I think it becomes a new growth opportunity, and let's move that forward. Some things that are not working well, discontinue the investment very explicitly, not just up here in exploration, but also here in the incubation. We'll probably get ready to cull the portfolio and remove the economic losers. And then some are maybe not decided. Once they graduate from this innovation factory, if you will, then we can fund them and then move them, transition them completely to either a growth sector or into lines of business. So that's how our friends at Capital One handle this funding. In addition to the structured funding of value stream, this is how they take the innovation and have that little fast track for innovation. So that brings us to, we finished up 2/3 of the presentation, and I know that some folks have to leave. So before you leave, we want to give you the opportunity to ask some questions. If you have a question, we'll try to answer it quickly, and I know you might be on Freddie time, and you have I think a 5-minute buffer before you get to your next meeting, right? So any questions? Make up something if you don't think.
I had a question. Hi, I'm Tushar. On the value stream, yes. Let's say we had a slide. Now, one of the things out there was business priority or value to the business.
Yeah.
But there could be things which could be different value to different folks. In a sense, let's say if it's a tech upgrade, business may not see as much value in it, but IT might. So in that case, that could be a challenge, right?
Absolutely. So I'll give you a short answer and then I'll let Roland elaborate on that. So this is not just like folks are working in a vacuum. Remember, we're getting collaborative flow. So absolutely, we want business folks to team with technical folks. And if you're using some version of the scaled agile framework, which I believe modern delivery is, right? Some of the stuff you're doing is based on that. You should have a notion of an architectural runway. So you want to make sure that those technical things are that foundation. Part of delivering quickly to market is make sure that we have a robust, secure infrastructure. So we want to make sure all those technology things are well founded. And then looks like Steve has a question.
Yeah, I've got a question. It seems like as you migrate to this world, you sort of strain that typical PPM tool world where you're reporting in the old way, portfolio, program, project, and you move to value and streams of work. Mm-hmm. And do you have any advice on, kind of that moving from a plan view type of typical world to Atlassian kind of agile world, and how you get there while you're kind of doing both worlds at the same time?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. Have no fear. The folks in Australia have covered you. They just want you to write a big check. Yeah. By that I mean the folks at Atlassian. So Atlassian, I assume you're using Jira, and Jira acquired a new product called AgileCraft, and that has become their PPM tool that they've integrated. It's called Jira Align, ALIGN, and as long as you got a big enough wallet, write a check to Atlassian, and your life will be wonderful.
And do people that are kind of doing the old plan view world, we have plan view and Atlassian, so we just haven't married the two in terms of reporting. We haven't brought on Align yet, but maybe we will. But do people marry the two worlds, or do you commit to one?
It's my preference that if you have a tool, you commit to one, unless you have something much smaller. Both Jira and once you bring on Jira Align, that it becomes it's very monolithic and large. Same thing with the PlanView side. Now PlanView, the folks there have also taken care of you. They have their version of Jira Align, so you should look into that. And you probably want to stick with that. However, there are smaller, there are lighter tools. PlanView, for example, has acquired LeanKit, and LeanKit is a very lightweight tool that sits on top of your PPM tool, and you should be able to run LeanKit and get this similar sort of visibility.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Right. Other questions?
Sanjeev, I was just going to say, pretty much everywhere out there seems to be, I would say 90% focus on leading metrics and 10% focus on lagging metrics. And I would like to find more balance there. So as we're about to start up a quarter's worth of work, what is the business number we're trying to move? How would we measure it? Into what database would we see some number move, right? And if we can use a system like this to deliver quickly within a quarter's time frame, if we're doing PIs and all that sort of thing, I should be able to see the actual business number move, and we can start to see real results and focus more on the outcomes as opposed to so much focus on the leading metrics, if that makes sense.
All right. So Morgan, that was you, right? We just answered your question because
Hey, yeah, this is Morgan. Hi, Sanjeev. A question around actually what Roland was just talking about, outcomes. Many organizations, I feel like they can mature with the bottlenecks and the lead time, cycle time, all that, if they can get the metrics set up. Freddie does have that. It's actually going very smoothly with their Tableau integration with Jira. However, outcome-based features, epics, initiatives, I still think it's a struggle across the board with organizations. Do you have any success stories that you could share from your 2 Fortune 200 examples?
Yeah. So again, all of them, you absolutely have to set in place this structure that goes from the strategy level to the portfolio level and then the program level. And I know at Freddie you have the program level really working well. but I wonder whether you should start to thread that backwards higher up the chain. So our prescribed method over there is using OKRs, objectives and key results. In all the examples that we've shared, we've always set up these objectives and key results. You work with the strategy folks, usually C-level folks that are saying, this is what we want to do this year. We want to increase customer satisfaction. We want better inspect and adapt. We want cost savings. And then you take those outcomes and you flow those down to the columns in that portfolio Kanban. So the OKRs are a great way to do that, and we've done it. Yeah, go ahead.
I could give a specific example, a real life example. So Fortune 100 company, there was a ranking of mobile apps done, and their mobile app was rated number 6th or 7th in the country. Chief marketing officer, extremely mad, right? Do you realize how much money we've spent on this mobile stuff, and you're telling me we're number 7? I'm not happy. So the usual way that most organizations would do this in a project mindset is, okay, let's gather up all the deficiencies in the mobile app and let's go get funded at the end of next year. And maybe 2 years from now, we'll actually have an updated mobile app. That would be the sort of project way to do it. But these guys said, nope, forget all that, not doing any of that. What is the number one thing that's causing our score to go down on the mobile app rankings? Flexible payment. We do not have flexible payment on our mobile apps. Great, let's put payment on our apps right now. Once again, if you have your project hat mentality on, you're going to say, okay, great, let's do Apple Pay, let's do Google Pay, let's do PayPal. Said, nope, not doing that either. Pick one and get it out there right now. They chose to take Apple Pay, launch it immediately. They actually got it out there in weeks, okay? And they were instantly able to actually see payments happening through the mobile app, lots of them. They were able to start making customers happy now, not 2 years from now. And they were able to measure how much revenue is coming in through the Apple Pay. And then they decided, okay, great, people actually do want to pay with their thumb. Now let's launch Google Pay. Now let's launch PayPal or whatever, right? So that's just a real life example of breaking the project mentality, taking something really small, pushing it all the way through and getting actual measured business results very quickly.
Yeah, and net result was they moved up from number 7 to number 3 on the ranking.
Yep.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that an answer like that, you had to connect with the business side to see those revenue numbers. Whereas on IT, you wouldn't be able to measure it, so you had to use business. Thanks for that example.
Thank you, Morgan. All right, speaking of connecting the business, let's talk about how we need to set up some sort of management structure across business and IT so that we can get all this cool stuff that we're talking about. And that is none other than our Agile Value Management Office. We're actually going to look to the military, to General Stanley McChrystal, and he's going to talk to us about this team of teams model. And then I'll talk about how we manifest that within our business.
General Stanley McChrystal, why is a team of teams better than a team of rivals? Because that certainly worked for Lincoln.
Well, in the sense that a team of rivals brings healthy disagreement and new ideas. I teach it in my course at Yale. I think it's great. But in reality, when you're trying to scale an organization, it's not a group of people around a table. You're really trying to bring different parts of the organization that typically are cohesive small teams or sometimes silos. You're trying to connect those so that at scale, the organization can have some of the dynamics of the small team we're also familiar with. We can have the effectiveness of shared consciousness across a big team.
Well, talk about your organization in Iraq when you were fighting Al-Qaeda. How did it evolve?
It's interesting. I had grown up in the special operations world, and we had spent years building really good small teams, cohesive teams, very, very well trained, very, very well resourced, very confident. And we thought that was great. And we thought that if you brought enough of these great teams together and put them under a command, problem solved. But it's a little like the 2004 men's Olympic basketball team. Just bringing great talent didn't make a great team. For us, just bringing great small teams didn't make a great big team. So what we had to do was transform that from individual small teams into this team of teams. Some of the things we had to do was break down siloed walls, because those teams, the SEALs, Army Special Forces, Rangers, had different cultures, different languages, different backgrounds. And then as we brought different parts of the interagency and Department of State, CIA, and others, you had to break down other equities and personalities and whatnot. And so you had to have a shared sense of what you were about. And we did that through radical transparency. We call it shared consciousness. And then on the back of that, we were able to empower execution at much lower level, much closer to the point of action, where someone now has contextual understanding of the situation. They have the confidence to act without going up the chain.
And you also had technology on your side, but according to the book, it seems as though you were frustrated because big data wasn't working for you. And here on Wall Street, the thinking is that big data can...
Yeah. So he goes on to talk about big data and all that, and it's really not germane. So I want to move on to this implementation of what we call the Agile Value Management Office. All right. So our goal, if you remember the words that General McChrystal used, he said, we want to create a shared consciousness and a shared purpose where we can work across multiple silos and team with partners all across those organizational silos to get things done. So the way we've been doing this or helping our customers do this over the last 4 or 5 years, and we have Roland and myself and Audrey, a colleague of ours, have a book coming out next year, is with this organizational construct that we call the Agile Value Management Office. We have our teams here at the trench level. We have our organization construct over here called the Agile VMO, cross-functional, cross-hierarchy, and cross-silo. Cross-functional, cross-hierarchy, and cross-silo. We have people who are both at the team level and on this VMO. We have people who are at the executive level who are also on the VMO, and those are the folks that we call linking pins. Let's sort of unpack that and see how that works. Let's start at the ground up. We begin, and Roland's talked a lot about this, with our value stream team. So we have these end-to-end teams, and those end-to-end teams are working across business and IT to come up with an idea, run some discovery, refine those things, break those down, deliver, run, measure, and back. Right? So this is an end-to-end team at the ground level that's working across business and IT all the way to the customer, including measurement and back. Remember, our measurement of business agility, our focus on business agility is how quickly can we measure and learn. So measurement is embedded into this. So if you're doing DevOps, you want to make sure that you have your DevOps telemetry and all that lined up properly. All right. Next level up is our Agile Value Management Office. We have linking pins, 1 or 2 folks from each team that are there temporarily whenever they're necessary, when they need to come together, whether it's for PI planning once a quarter or regular weekly meetings. These folks get together every week and they're looking across the portfolio, looking across that Kanban and making sure things are flowing. We also have a PMO program manager and a VMO program manager and a VMO sponsor, and that's usually somebody who's coming from the executive team. And then speaking of the executive team, this is where the objectives, the OKRs get set. They're the ones who take the strategy of the organization, translate this into those desired outcomes, give us the key metrics, make sure that we get that funding across the value streams, and then we get our marching orders, and then the VMO can help deliver across those teams from end to end. So that's how we put it all together. There's a longer laundry list, and for those of you who are detail-oriented and who want more insight into what the work of this team is, and those are these areas: defining the process, organizing around the value streams, transition to adaptive planning, all the way to managing organizational change. You don't have to do all of these things if you already have a lot of things in place. So Roland, if you could just kind of talk to this case study. This one is actually I can introduce it because I co-presented this with some of our friends from Nationwide Insurance. This was the digital marketing group where they took this model of transformation and they decided, they had a lot of stuff going on, but they wanted to do some training, they wanted to do some consulting. But here's our VMO in the red box, right? So they conducted an assessment. They made sure they had structure set up for decision-making, issue resolution, and risk mitigation, end-to-end across business and IT. And they led those changes to all the execution practices and roles and the implementation activities. Roland, anything you want to add over here when it comes to this case study?
Just that 2 of the things that I've discussed thus far really have come out of this group at Nationwide Insurance that we worked with. I talked just now about the Apple Pay and accelerating the delivery of that and breaking the project model, picking one feature, getting it through the whole business value stream from executive out to production, very quickly. That was done with this VMO group at Nationwide that owns all of the digital facing, customer facing services at Nationwide, all the customer facing websites, various mobile apps, and all that kind of stuff. We set up value streams there and aligned value streams to not to internal products or platforms, but to customer services. What do customers come to Nationwide looking for? And there's like 5 or 6 things, right, that you come to Nationwide Insurance looking for. Those things will always be there. Let's organize around those. We're not going to organize around a project because projects come and go, but billing will always be there. Claims management will always be there. Let's fund that. Let's organize value streams around that. And we're able to get some of these kinds of results.
Okay. Yeah. The last thing I want to add to that was this was a business-led transformation because it was led by the chief digital officer, and she was reporting up to the chief marketing officer, as Roland mentioned. So this was a transformation that with the entire alignment, everything from agile and such was all done on the business side. Many of the a lot of the work that we do ends up being on the IT side, but more and more you're starting to see business organizations step take the lead with this. Okay. So if you put it all together, and we wanted to finish, we leave you with at least 10 minutes or so for questions and leave you some time before you move on to your next meeting, a little slack over there to get a little coffee and stuff. This is our code, if you will. You want to crack the code, set up an end-to-end flow with your portfolio Kanban, evolve that flexible funding model, which, by the way, is the largest impediment to business agility. It's not the flow, it's not the delivery, right? It's the funding model that usually impedes us from moving fast and getting things done. So you got to fix that one. And then setting up this cross-hierarchy, cross-functional, and cross-silo construct that we call the Agile VMO. So we're going to stop there and take questions and hang out and chat and give you any sort of anecdotes. If you're interested in more stuff, we're available for consulting, training. There's also our certified leadership class where we cover all of this stuff.
Hey, so one question that came up, Sanjeev, was, is this presentation available for people to look at later?
Absolutely, we'll send it out.
Hey, Sanjeev, I had a question on the VMO.
Yep.
So I know you have been involved with some of the organization implementing this as a concept. In terms of practical implementation, what were the top 1 or the top 3 impediments you had in implementing that or bringing that into action?
Yeah, it really is how do you organize middle management, right? How do you get folks working together? So our bosses, our executives, they can say, all right, number one, make it so. They can set up, they have this wonderful vision. They can tell us to make things happen. At the team level, people are bought in. They want to work this way. People like working with Agile. And then our job at the middle management level is to figure out how to make this stuff flow across the organization at the middle management level. So the VMO really addresses that bang on. And I'm sorry to say, but whatever methodology you're using, that's out in the industry, they don't address this problem, at least not holistically across business and IT. So whether it's Scaled Agile Framework or Disciplined Agile or Scrum at the team level, none of them address sufficiently enough this problem of how do you organize, get this stuff moving at the middle management level. So number one impediment to me is how do you get those, how do you organize not only the work itself, but how do you make our middle managers really the leaders of this execution? Here's the statistic: 80% of change organization, change initiatives that are led by middle management succeed. 80%. So we want our middle management to take this forward, and we know that we have a very high chance of success if we can figure out the way to make it happen. Roland, you want to give another impediment?
I think a lot of it is just really organizational change management. Everything, absolutely everything, from the funding on down to delivery, is designed to not only support the status quo, but enforce the status quo. And you're bringing a group of people who are saying, we're going to question all of that potentially, and be able to drive the change. And so the change management piece, I think, is really key in terms of Yeah, putting these people in charge to both influence up how things happen and influence down, as Sanjeev mentioned, that middle management layer is really big. And there's a lot of focus, unfortunately, on processes and artifacts and stuff. That's not the issue. It's driving the change of behavior of hundreds or thousands of people. As I like to say, the soft stuff is the hard stuff. And the VMO really needs to put a lot of focus on that.
Other questions?
Hi, this is Nixon. So my question more to Roland on the budgeting side. Considering this is more like we got out of the funding an initiative or funding a project from that model to funding a team necessarily. So it's really no longer the 5% to 10% swing on the total budget. Instead, if you really need to stand up based on your WSJF model where you're putting your value, isn't funding model become more predictable now with this model versus it was before?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I will say that except for the occasional really big transformation, big capital improvement, I talk to a lot of IT leaders, and most of them say, my budget doesn't change that much from one year to the next. Sometimes it does when there's something big going on. But unfortunately, it seems like there's always something big going on. As soon as we finish one big thing, we start another big thing. And so those budgets tend to be big, and they tend to stay big over the long term. We don't really see wild fluctuations that much. And so given that we don't really tend to see huge fluctuations in most places, in most parts of the organization, can we just use the data that we've got years of data on funding for various things? Like, can we just use that and go with it? And it's really taking a budgeting approach to what we're going to deliver as a scope approach. So the business case model is, what's all the scope you want to deliver? How much is it going to cost? Go get the money for that. This model is a budgeting model. Here's how much money we have to support billing or claims management or whatever it's going to be. This is your allowance. Don't spend it all in one place. Spend it wisely and build economically valuable stuff. So it's just opposite of scope-based estimation versus top-down budgeting.
Right.
So it will absolutely be more predictable because you're setting it.
Correct.
You're setting budget. Right.
Thanks.
I think we have time for at least one, maybe two more questions before we adjourn.
And I'll just say one more thing. The key to making that work is to not build the economic losers. Right. That's how you fit stuff within the budget. Don't build the 30% of stuff that nobody actually is going to use.
That's true.
So Sanjeev or Roland, any thoughts on or tips on how to build the right kind of portfolio Kanban boards? Because we do Kanban boards on the team levels and sometimes on the program level. But any thoughts on implementing it at the portfolio level?
Yeah, we need to make sure we're focusing on the right unit of work. And a lot of times in a project organization, PMOs are focused on the projects, right? And what we would like to see, if you're going to be a value-based organization, is that you're focused on the flow of value. So what I'd like to see we track on these boards is not projects, but capabilities. What features are we launching now, right? Regardless of their funding source, regardless of what project they belong to, whose money it is, we want to see flow of value. So we need to think of at a lower level of granularity, capabilities, features, MMPs, whatever you want to call them. That's the unit that we're going to maybe track at this level.
So if there are no more questions, I just wanted to announce, you guys are probably the first to know, keep an eye out for our new book. It'll be out early next year from Barrett Kaler Publishers on, the title is Moving from PMO to VMO, from Program Management or Project Management Office to Value Management Office, Managing for Value Delivery. And if you want to get in touch with either Roland or myself, that's my, there's my email over there, and then there's our general email, info@Lightspeed, and then we also have our intrepid coaches, Raj and George, who are there available to you at any time to help you guys, and we also have Sri Harsha and Mark Carroll and a couple other folks who are from Lightspeed who have joined you recently, Ben Scott.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you, Roland, for this excellent presentation. I think it will be helpful for us to look at this presentation as food for thought. I would be sharing this with the rest of the folks, the presentation. We are also recording this presentation in case some of your friends, you want to recommend them to go through it. So we will be also sharing that. And along with that, Sanjeev might share with us some additional materials. We'll make that available on our team site, which will be publicly available to all. So with that, thank you very much, all of you, for attending this event. We had very good participation, and I'm sure a lot of people loved it. So thank you, Sanjeev and Roland.
Thank you very much, Sony, and really appreciate you and the team in both inviting us and working so hard to organize it. Thank you all for out there who are sparing, let's see, from 2:30 to 3:30, an hour of your afternoon on a pretty dreary day to with us. So, well, hopefully the topic was more scintillating than the weather. So.
Thank you, Sanjeev.